Hello and Namaste. This is Janata Television and I am Arun Deo Joshi. Welcome to the show The View. In this show, we'll be seeking views of different personalities on different issues. Today, we are talking about cinema and cinematic language. We have with us a very prominent Indian cinema director, Girish Kasaravalli. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
You have been to Nepal for the first time.
Yeah, this is my first visit.
How do you like Nepal?
Yeah, really very interesting, nice people, nice atmosphere. It's actually, yesterday I had been to the golden part of Nepal, Kathmandu, and I really loved it.
So thank you for loving our country.
Yeah.
So about cinema, 14 films so far, 14 national awards, 4 Swarna Kamals among them. What an achievement. How did you achieve?
Well, there are many other film directors who have achieved much more than this. I am basically, I'm trained in, from Pune Institute, Film and Television Institute of India, Pune. I did my 3 years course in film direction. Probably that had helped me a lot in, understanding this media better.
So you are only second to the all-time great Indian director, Satyajit Ray.
Yeah.
He has 6 Swarna Kamals and you have 4 so far. And you will be soon going past him.
Touch wood. I hope I will be able to achieve that. But that doesn't mean, I'm in nowhere near Ray.
But again, like you have achieved lots of national awards, and there's a myth like in India sometimes that the cinema makers say, when you have a film that year, they won't release their film since the national award is already yours.
No, it's not true. Well, the present day Indian cinema is quite vibrant and a lot of youngsters are coming. I'm sure, there will be very good filmmakers in the future emerging from India.
And last year, like Bahubali won the national prize, national award, and you were quite critical about that. Why so?
See, first of all, national awards are meant for the films with certain aesthetic sensibilities and social commitment. And I personally felt that film neither had this nor the other one. So I thought it didn't really,
What was the real reason that you thought that it is not worthy for the national award?
No, it's all, see, after all, any award is actually the reflection of the mindset of the jury members. So probably the jury felt that it's better, that kind of films should be encouraged. But I belong to other kind of cinema and I didn't like that decision at all. So I criticized that.
Is it something to do with politics?
Not really politics, but it's aesthetic sensibilities. And well,
they say, when there is a government, certain government in the power, and the national award things also has some influence of the government.
It never happened earlier. I don't think so far it never happened in Indian context. There are films which are awarded which had a very critical view of the government in power. When I made my second important film, it's called The Story of Tabara, wherein the character Tabara, in the end, he throws his pension back and says, "You idiots do not know how to rule the country. You have been in the power for 25 years, you don't know how to rule the country." Well, that time the party in power, didn't object to it at all.
Actually, it was during a Pukar that Anil Kapoor was an actor and it got a national award for the popular cinema. And that time there was a right-wing you can say, a BJP government over there in the power. And it was quite critical about Pakistan. And it was a quite very, very commercial cinema that got national award. It was also criticized that time.
But here in this case, I don't think there was any interference from the government, but the jury probably, many of the jury members are from the other kind of cinema. And see, one of the reasons why we accused him, there is a separate award for that. There is a separate award for the most entertaining and popular film. This Golden Lotus is purely meant for films with aesthetic sensibilities and social responsibility. Um, when a popular film is brought into this one, then naturally I thought it's not the right decision.
You have won lots of national award, like I said earlier, and you have lots of achievement in Kannada cinema also. Uh, and you are quite renowned Indian director now in the worldwide, and you are prescribed as a Indian cinema. When anybody had to prescribe Indian cinema to watch Indian cinema, several of your films are being prescribed. But as of now, that the so-called big awards in the alternative cinema also, so-called alternative cinema like Cannes and all those, you haven't got any achievement over there. Why so?
No, you see, what had happened was I make films in South Indian language, and we don't have any promotional budget at all in our films. So we are not able to push our film, to any festivals. So we need to take our film to the festival, be visible there, and hire agents, which I have not been able to do any of those things. I would just make the film in the very small budget, and by the time I finish my film, I would have run out of my money, and then I just keep quiet.
Like
So
this,
that's why I have not been able to push my films into the international arena at all.
like they say sometime, like the cinema makers who goes to the international film festivals and achieves there something, they make cinema with the view of the pure foreigners, like they make cinema like what foreigners want to see about their country. Maybe if you are making the cinema from your one perspective, one view, one idea, and you want to make your own people see and see the cinema, maybe that is the reason that they are not.
That's one of the reasons. Yes, I don't want to make films to the menus set by them, to the prescription, to their prescription. Because I come from a region, I come from a country which has a very strong narrative tradition. I come from a country which is full of problems. So I want to use my aesthetic sensibilities, which I have derived from my tradition, to highlight the issues that is blocking my society. So in that I don't take the Europe or America into consideration at all. I know when we talk about third world cinema today, that the whole aesthetics of third world cinema is being decided not by the third world
Westerns,
themselves,
they are decided.
but by the Europe and
Westerners,
America.
yeah.
We have to protest that. Who are they to decide what we should do or what we should not do? How can they say, this is third world aesthetics? We have our own traditions. We evolve a narrative tradition from our own tradition.
That means we as a cinema maker shouldn't bother about the getting awards in the international cinema. Just
No,
we have to make
no,
our
but then
films.
we have to be, there is a need for us to be visible in the international forum, but not by following their
prescription.
dictums. If you follow their dictums, you are contradicting yourself, because you are also protesting against, say, the colonization, or against some kind of a authoritarianism that comes from the West or from the developed countries. But while making films, if you follow the dictums set up by them, isn't that a contradiction?
Yeah, there's the same thing happening over same thing in the discussion in Nepali cinema right now. Few so-called alternative Nepalese cinema are doing good in international circuit, and over here in Nepal, when critically we watch the cinema. In Nepali context, there's a serious problem in the script, in the story itself. So even though that are being recognized, so is it an achievement for us as it is being recognized, or we should making our films and keep on making our films whether it is recognized or not?
See, first of all, let me be very clear about this. One is not making films for festival's sake. One is not making films purely for a critical acclaim. It's an inner urge of a filmmaker to express something. He is reacting to certain situation. He is reacting to certain, human conditions. So he will, he just follows his impulses.
You said that you studied in FTII, and that helped a lot for you to make a cinema and maybe the achieving the awards. Is it necessary to go to the cinema school and learn cinema to make a good cinema?
Well, Abbas Girosami has said, best way to make films is to, best way to learn filmmaking is by making films itself. But I have a contrary opinion. There are 3 or 4 ways of learning about filmmaking. One is to make films, of course, directly, but the academic training will help one in very many ways. Because I am from a science background, I wouldn't have been able to understand the aesthetics of art if I had just jumped into making films. But a 3-year training at a film school helped me understand the arts, the perspectives, the aesthetics, and also those were the times when digital technology was not there, so we were not aware of world cinema at all. We were not exposed to world cinema, and joining a film school helped me a lot. In fact, you'll be surprised to know, before joining FTI, I hadn't even seen the films of Satyajit Ray. So that's, being a Indian filmmaker, I hadn't seen the Indian masters, any works of Indian master, any works of any masters, Indian masters. So that way, the academic training really helps.
And maybe these days there are, like you say, the digital medium is there. We have lots of things in the internet. We can read a lot in the internet. We can see cinemas in the internet also. Maybe most of them are pirated ones, but we got to see them.
Yeah, right.
We got to see world cinema also. We get it in the market as well. So, is it possible to just learn from your own experiences,
So certainly,
your own pace,
say
and
this.
make a good cinema?
Say take for example the Indian masters, the 3 masters, Satyajit Ray, Mrinal Sen and Rajshri Ghatak. They were not from any film schools. Or look at the contemporary world masters. Many of them are not from the film schools, but then they had developed over a period of time a certain aesthetic sensibilities by watching films, by reading about films, by reading literature, by exposing themselves to various other art forms. That is very important. To be a filmmaker, one has to have a kind of a open view, so that he observes what is happening around him, how it is expressed in other art forms, how it is expressed in cinema, what are the social movements, how they become voice for certain social causes. So one has to have a deeper understanding of all these things. It's only then one can do justice to his subject.
Like you say in another lecture, like cinema makers have a political statement to say.
No, according to me, any film that is made is a political statement. Any work of fiction, that's a political statement. Whether one writes a short story or a long story, bad story or a good story, it's a political statement. Similarly, a well-made film or a badly made film is a political film. I am of the opinion, the moment you decide to place a camera somewhere, the moment you decide to cut somewhere, the moment you decide to put some words in the mouth of an actor, you have made a political statement.
Yeah, and you said like a good film and bad film. Like lots of people say there are only 2 kinds of films: good cinema and bad cinema. Still, they are being so called. They are being parallel cinema, mainstream cinema, and now these are those are saying that people are saying that midstream cinema as well. So how do you differentiate in them? Are there such kind of cinemas?
Well, these are the terms invented by the critics and not by the filmmakers. When I make a film, when I set out to make a film, I decide to make a film, that's all. So whether it is a commercial film or a popular film or where to slot it is not pre-decided. But certainly, the critics want to label certain films, so they use certain terms, and thereby, a school is formed, a school is developed, a tradition is developed. So for a filmmaker, it becomes very important to understand all these schools. Whether one follows it or not is different. So we need to know what is neorealism, we need to know what is new wave. Well, when Godard set out to make films, he didn't say, I am going to make new wave film. He said, I want to make a film which does not follow the traditions, the existing pattern. So even in India, we have, the critics have termed various schools, like they called the films that are made are post Bhuvan Shom as new wave,
Indian New Wave.
Indian new wave. Now it's already 45 years or more, and how can it be new still?
Yes.
So they keep on changing the terminology, and well, nomenclature is different, but the filmmaking, no filmmaker ever starts a film with any the intention of making, any within any quotes, any.
Yeah, like you, Adurga Prakishnan, Sam Benegal, your contemporary. Before that, Madikal. All these were saying, all these were termed as a parallel cinema maker. Are you confident with that? Are you
Yeah,
confident with
parallel
that?
is better than new wave. Parallel, you see, there is a mainstream cinema. So something which is parallel to that, you don't use those aesthetic, you don't use that narratology, you don't use that kind of a, padding up films. So you are different from them. So that's why if you call them as parallel cinema, it's fine. But there again, the questions are as parallel to what? After them, the parallels can also, these are not really parallel. But I keep,
So that's why the so-called parallel cinema makers say we are the mainstream, and the other is the parallel one. That's always there. And like about your cinema, you often always like you make cinema from the stories or public articles. Why so?
I come from a language, one of the South Indian languages called Kannada. We have a very rich literature. I have grown up reading, Kannada literature, and I have read a lot of very important, very significant literature, and I've been adopting those short stories, film novels into films. But I'm not adopting them
As it is.
as it is. I'm not it's not transform from one art form into other. It's a transcreation. I reinterpret the story or that novel and create a new work of art.
Like I also made a short film called Kamaru, and I also made a story about the famous writer over here. And I do had to do some revisions over there. But I was quite fortunate. Writer was not unhappy. He said, "You made a film in my story. Your story is not distorted." Several times over here, same director, same story writer, the other story made a film made in other story by him. He was not quite happy about that. He said his story was distorted all the way. And you are making the films on the other story and other articles. How often you have countered this thing that writer has said your story is distorted, you have damaged my story, all this thing.
Of the 14 films that I have made, 13 are based on literature. The only one of them, which is a television film, is based on a story by me myself. It's not a story. I have specially written it for the film. But none of my writers are, have any objections to the variations, the deviations, because see, after all, they are also they are very sensitive people. If the film is is very sincere, then they don't take objection to the deviations. If the deviation is because of the commercial reason or for some other reasons other than the aesthetic reasons, then they take objection to it.
So do you sit with a writer when you revise their story or reinterpret their story? Like you tell the writer, I am doing these things, and
No, what I do is I write the script. I take a lot of time. I take nearly 1 year, 2 years to write a script, and then I show it to the writer and tell them I have made these many changes. If you are unhappy with it, I'll drop the project. But fortunately, all of them have approved it. But I don't sit with them and write, because then it may not become my film. Of the 13 films which are based on novels, one is based on a script by someone else, not by me. That's the only film where I was not comfortable while shooting, because I didn't know why this particular scene was visualized, why it was written. See,
so you had to convince the director sometimes that I have made these changes and this is for this region and you should accept
yeah,
this.
well, after I finish the script, I show it to them and then we discuss. Tell them these are all my preoccupations. I want to Well, what has happened is, over a period of time, I have the writers in Karnataka know that I am making some. That the moment I pick up the story, they know that I am going to make a lot of changes, bringing in a lot of new elements, and they are quite happy about it because once I explain to them, I convince
And
them.
what changes you make in the story, like reinterpreting the story, when there's a certain story that is read by a lot of people, and what kind of reinterpret for the reinterpretation, what kind of changes do you want to see in the
See,
story?
the writer might have written the story some 20, 30 years ago. And when I read it now, if I find certain elements which I find, very significant for today's context, then I reinterpret appropriate to a contemporary situation and reinterpret it. See, for example, there is a very popular, my Gulabi Takis was based on a very, very well-known short story called Gulabi Takis and Small Waves by a writer called Vaidehi. When I approached her, she agreed, but I told her I am going to change the whole narrative thread because the story was set in 1930s. I said I am not interested in telling a story of 1930s. I want to make a story. I want to tell a story of the last decade of previous century, because the 1990s to 2000, India underwent a lot of social changes, turmoil, and I want to bring all those elements into the film. She
Like I
agreed.
have been fortunate to watch your Gulabi Takis in Goa somewhere back. Uh, Over there, you have shown a television, so
Yeah.
maybe that wasn't there
No,
in
it was
1930s.
actually a cinema theater coming to a village. But what I did was, and I told her, see, uh, a cinema theater coming to a village and bringing a new sensibility is something which everyone is familiar with. But I want to show the politics of imaging itself. The politics of imaging is very, for me, according to me, the electronic media plays a major role in, shaping up our imagination, shaping up of our opinion, this opinion makers.
Like
Manufacturing consent, manufacturing opinion, like manufacturing consent, here you are manufacturing opinions. The television channel, say there, because of the television, a lot of people are watching serials, and they want to, love and fight, quarrel. There are a lot of people watch news that during the war, so immediately they think, the war is between two nations, but they think the people in their village are as look up to them as enemies.
yeah, about the changing the script, like you said somewhere, like Ghatasrad, the writer said you only borrowed my name
No,
of the
not
whole story.
Gatshraddha. Gatshraddha director was very happy with the film.
Okay.
It was another filmmaker, another writer, who after watching the film said, yes, you have borrowed just the title, the rest are all yours.
Okay. Anyway,
In fact, of all my films, Gatshraddha is one film which is very close to the original short story. I have brought in little changes.
like you said, like of the 14 films you made, uh, only one film that you made in another scripts and the personal scripts, and you were not compatible with that cinema. You were quite, and how important it is for the director to write his own script.
Well, it all depends because Alain René never wrote his own scripts. He always, like Margaret Duras wrote, Alain Robbe wrote his scripts. But I can't think of doing that, because for me, script writing is not writing a storyline or a plot. When I sit down to write the script, unless I am clear about the images, I won't be able to write a scene. So, if I have to write that this man goes and sits in the corner, I want to know why he goes and sits in the corner, why not in the center. So, such kind of things, I need to see the script. It's not like writing a story. The moment you sit down to write the story, our professor used to say in cinema, you cannot say there was a tree, because in literature you can say there was a tree. But the moment you set your camera, it will show you whether it is jack tree or mango tree or neem tree. So you have to decide whether you have to place the man under a neem tree or under a jackfruit tree, or So that way one has to be very clear. You cannot say the man walked in. You say the moment you say walked in, if you show, you have to tell them what color shirt he was wearing, what kind of and
how he's walking,
how
what was
he is
his,
walking,
what was his
what
step,
kind
how
of a
was his.
physique he had, and all
And
that.
about that you like you and your contemporaries had made Indian cinema. In what should be Indian cinema like? You have already described it, and it's already established. And now in Nepal, few people are trying to make a Nepalese cinematic language, and they want to establish a Nepali cinema, like a Nepali cinematic language. Uh, they want to show that, oh, this is our culture. This is what do you suggest for them? How should it be done? Like you have a long experience revolting against the so-called mainstream and making an Indian cinema.
So here, I have often said it in my interviews. There's nothing called Indian cinema. You can only say Indian cinemas. Because it's like a Europe. You have there are so many. Each filmmaking center has its own style, its own kind of. The North Indian cinema, the Bollywood cinema is quite different from Bengali cinema. The South Indian cinema is quite different. Even in South, the Kannada cinema is different from Malayalam cinema. Malayalam cinema is different from Telugu cinema.
Yeah, even Nepal, being so small country, they have lots of ethnicities. Like 70s are already recognized by the constitution. So the more than
So,
that.
when you set out to make a film, I think you have to be very, very conscious of your roots, your tradition, and your culture, and the social problems there. If you set out to make films which are not rooted, which you want to, say, I want to become universal. Those who set out to become universal will not, will never reach anywhere. Those who want to go back to their roots will become universal, which is very right.
So stick to your roots and make the cinema, and you will be good.
See, after all, if the emotions are genuine, then these cultural details will communicate automatically.
There are lots of things to talk with you, but still, as a television, and it's a time is limited for us. So, wanting to know lots more about you, today we have to say goodbye for the right now.
Thank you very much. It's a great opportunity to share some of my views with you and the Nepali audience.
Yeah, thank you.
I always wanted to come to Nepal, and finally, you, the Human Rights Film Festival, gave me this opportunity to come and visit Nepal.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you. This was Girish Kasaravalli talking about cinema, world cinema, how Nepali cinema should be. This much for today. Good night.